All right, Review Realms back again. We're talking about a band that I don't think we like to miss when they put out new material. Like if we happen to be during a hiatus or during that time or whatever they put out new music, we're coming out of that hiatus to talk about them.
I'm Matt Heafy from Trivium.
Which is pretty much what we've done. So today we're here to talk about Trivium's 9th album. Wow, I can't believe it's been 9 albums. What the Dead Men Say. So it's been 3 years since the last album, The Sin in the Sentence. Right, this is the second album to have Alex Bent. They've actually had an album with the same drummer 2 times in a row. Who would have thought?
It's incredible how Alex Bent manages to do an entire drum solo for the whole record. Obviously, Matt does the vocals and stuff, but I feel like the rest of the band, Alex is just like doing so much behind them. Like he's just like Alex burns significantly more calories than probably the rest of that band put together.
I definitely want to go track by track for this one. I think it's really important for this one. With the last album, The Sin in the Sentence, I think Trivium really established, like they were always known for like changing up their sound with each album, like a little bit. And I think with the last album, they really found like their like niche. Like they found like a sound that like really worked for them. So with What the Dead Men Say, I was like, how do they continue off of that? Like, what are they going to do? Like, how are they going to make this? How are they going to make this different? So with What the Dead Men Say, you mostly get a continuation of The Sin in the Sentence with like some slight differences here and there. The album starts with 9, for 9 albums pretty much. But I mean, so it's not a Trivium album if you don't start out with an instrumental.
I like that.
The intro, it was cool.
The album starts strong with those two. Like,
yeah, I like that. I like that it goes right into the title track.
Yeah, and it meshes well.
Originally, they had written it all as one song, but then they said, they decided to split it up just to have that instrumental there.
I feel like Matt's Twitch channel has like changed how he plays, and I think it's changed how he kind of writes music and how he approaches writing music. The parts, you can tell. Like, it feels like Trivium, but at times it feels like, I don't want to say like repetitive, but you notice that a lot of the tracks just fall into like the same grooves.
With the title track, the thing I was wondering, I was like, where does the title What the Dead Men Say come from? Paulo said it was from a science fiction novel that was written like sometime in the 1950s of the same name. The first time I heard the title track, it took me a while to get into that one.
I think for me, it's not a bad track. The thing that, honestly, the thing that bothers me is the chorus of that song. How many times
it is kind of repetitive.
It's super repetitive, and I'm like, we're gonna repeat this line like 5 times, and I just like the whole song is good, but then it gets to the chorus, and I'm like, okay.
But the next song, which was like the first taste of the album that we got, Catastrophist. And it wouldn't be a Trivium album if Matt Heafy wasn't introducing a word I've never heard of before.
Catastrophist. He makes up words for tracks.
Sometimes I wonder that if it's just a
word. Yeah, dude. He definitely just has like a notepad. He's like, when he just like sits in his room and makes track titles that maybe he'll just like bank them and keep them for something else. He's been sitting on Catastrophist for like 10 years. He's been waiting to use that one.
So the thing with Catastrophist, and I think this is my favorite song on the album, but this is what I'll say about it. It is the first single. Their singles all sound the same. They have the long, drawn-out intro. They're usually longer. And I love this song. Don't get me wrong. I love this song.
I do, too. I really like Catastrophist.
There's definitely a pattern when it comes to their first single.
I think that was definitely the best one for a single choice. It definitely sets the tone for the rest of the album. I think it's one of the best songs Trivium's ever written. I really liked this one. I thought it was a good way to like warm you into the album when they first announced it. And I think it's really eerie now how a lot of the lyrics from Catastrophist kind of relate to like the stuff that's going on right now in the world. A lot of the lyrics on this album are, and even though they wrote this well before the pandemic even started and like all this other stuff like that, it's just a little eerie to me. Amongst the Shadows and the Stones, I think that's definitely like the banger of the album. That's definitely like the angry one.
This record is just a completely different beast. Like you said, like they constantly reinvent their sound. But if you look back, like even a couple of albums, the distance that they've leapt, it's like ridiculous. Going through these songs, and like I just feel like some of the parts are kind of not monotonous, but kind of repetitive. Maybe at certain points they could have split it up and like kind of tried to branch out a little bit more. And I'm not entirely sure like if that's just not something they wanted to do on this record, if this is the style that they're trying to stick with going forward. Have they actually just been like looking for their style and they finally found it? I think this is just who they're going to be now.
I think so too, because this is not, because what the Dead Men Say is not much different from the last album, besides like very subtle things. I think this is the sound that they want to play with.
And I think Alex provides them a component that they weren't able to get before because they didn't have a consistent drummer or like somebody that was at his level of playability. I think now that they have that, it allows them to create a certain type of atmosphere and sound.
And I think a majority of these songs like try to switch things up. A lot of these songs just like kind of go right into like a totally different part. Like Amongst the Shadows and the Stones is definitely one of those where at the end you have like just randomly have that like thrashy part thrown in there. I think they do that with majority of the songs on this album. Bleed Into Me is definitely not one of them. That's one of the ones where I was like, this is definitely a single.
I mean, they've pretty much been doing this since like Vengeance Falls, I'd say. They make radio singles. A couple of radio singles like on their records.
I think Bleed Into Me is definitely one of them. I like that bass intro at the beginning of it.
I mean, still really good though, but I'm wondering, I really just wonder like how much they're gonna just continue to kind of push forward. And like, I feel like a lot of the riffs and ideas that are on this record definitely influenced by Matt's Twitch stream. He started to experiment so much more since he did that.
What really changed it for me for this album was understanding a lot of the lyrics.
Do you feel like it added or took away from the record?
It definitely added to it, because like my first few run-throughs of the album, like I wasn't blown away by it. I mean, I liked it, but then I kind of dived in a little more to see what most of the lyrics are about. The next one, this is my favorite song on the album, The Defiant. I was telling you, I was like, this is really like a lot of Ascendancy vibes for me on this one.
They call back to like different records now. I feel like they try to put a song from like each like version of themselves on the record. There's like songs that have like a Vengeance Falls vibe, and then there's ones that have Shogun vibe and like Ascendancy vibe. Sin and Ascendance, obviously. I think they blend it together too much, like, and it kind of strips some of the diversity away off the record. Yeah.
What you're trying to say is there are bands out there where, as they go over time, maybe they lose their sound or whatnot, and then they'll, the fans are like, oh, I don't like this, and then they're like, okay, let's try to go back to our old shit. And they do. And sometimes it's cool, but at the same time, now you're just we want to write like that again, and you're more focused about just write. You're not even focused about writing anymore. You're more about the sound. You're like, I want to sound like we did like 20 years ago.
You can pay homage to it. That's like my thing. And like, if you're gonna do it, you should go all the way. I think you should, like, if you want to make a song that sounds like something off Ascendancy, fuck it, let's make a song that sounds like it could have been off Ascendancy. I think that would have been really, really cool, and it would have prevented some of the things that I didn't like about the record, kind of prevent it from falling into any sort of a rut.
I think The Defiant does a nice job being like a nod to Ascendancy. It's not like full blown like Ascendancy. I don't think they're never gonna do that.
Yeah, they
again.
can't.
I don't think. I think it's a nice nod to it. It's very, very like anthemic. It reminded me a lot of that album. Sickness Unto You. I think that's like the second longest song on the album. That is one that didn't really stick with me the first time I heard it. But then I realized that the lyrics are a lot more personal to Matt Heafy than you think. At the same time, as his twin sons were being born, his dog was going to die. When I found that out, it started to stick with me a lot more. Very, very personal for that one. I like that this one you're hearing Matt Heafy do more stuff with his vocals that you didn't really hear before.
His vocals got significantly better. You remember, like, obviously he damaged them a long time ago. Like, yeah, like really bad, like to the point where he couldn't do any more like aggressive vocals. Like, he's learned a new technique now. And,
he does a new technique that's not damaging.
Yeah, and you can tell that he's a lot more comfortable like when he does it. And I think it sounds better, to be honest. It's nice to hear him doing those kind of vocals again.
Scattering the Ashes, this is where I kind of see your point about kind of being a little bit repetitive. This is not one of the more unique songs on the album. It has a very strict like regiment to that song. Most of the other songs like branch out into like some different parts, but that's one of the ones where it doesn't do that.
All right, let's switch this up a little bit. Let's get like some sort of a melodic idea going in here. We're moving towards some sort of like a changed melody a little bit. I know he does a lot of those parts because he has to sing over it. It would be nice to have the other guitar like kind of switch it up a little bit.
I know live they split up parts. Matt and Corey split up parts. As far as the records go, I think Corey's strictly doing leads and Matt's strictly doing the rhythm. I think that's how it goes for the records. But yeah, I mean, you definitely hear everybody on this album. Like everybody gets their share. Like I think pretty well between all the members.
I like hearing Paulo do those really high vocals.
Yeah, you didn't really hear that before. I mean, at least I never heard it before on a Trivium album because you know what he sounds like from the videos like live and everything like that.
Yeah.
And you hear him doing these harmonies.
I've listened to this album 8 times this week. I've been on the Trivium boat for a while with you, and I've pretty much there's always several tracks you and I can talk about. But I'm gonna be honest with you. Besides Catastrophist, nothing has stuck.
Really?
Nothing on this album has stuck to me. I love The Sin in the Sentence. I love Vengeance Falls. I loved In Waves. I love Shogun.
Wow.
Silence in the Snow. I enjoyed all those albums. And this one, I tried. I listened to it 8 times. Oh, I was listening on the way back from my parents' house. And I'll tell you, nothing. I don't know what it is. And like I said, like a Catastrophist, I love. But even though it's like it follows a single formula they have, but this is going to be what we're going to present. This is our presentation of what we're going to release. Mm-hmm. Now, I've always enjoyed it, but there's a formula, and it's obvious, but I still enjoy it. But, I was expecting maybe some other things to come out of it, and nothing has.
Bending the Art to Fear is one of the ones where I think, for me personally, I think it tries too much to branch out into different directions.
So they started off with this really cool, like, dissonant kind of, like, part. That's not something that we heard a lot in, like, previous Trivium. Then they go into this tremolo picking part, like this really fast picking part, right? You kind of expect it to lead into maybe something like maybe a little bit more thrashy or, like, darker. And it just doesn't go anywhere. And it kind of revolves around this idea, but it doesn't like move away from that idea. Like the idea doesn't change into anything else. And that's like one of the things in the ruts that I feel that a lot of these songs kind of fall into.
You know what I'm hearing now bands do is I think especially on this one, you hear that thing that Gojira does.
Yeah.
Where they pick slide. You hear that a lot. I hear that a lot. Of bands are doing that now.
There's just sections of these songs that like just didn't mesh the best. That they like. Some of these just could have been separate ideas that probably would have worked out to be better songs. And I'm a little bit confused on why they picked certain ideas to work with. That song kind of made me think of that as well.
The last song's the Ones We Leave Behind. I think that one ends the album nicely. That's definitely one of my favorite ones on the album.
Yeah, this one's good.
Yeah.
This one's not bad. I like the way it starts. I like that riff.
I like when they have really like a lot more like an upbeat like kind of riff, like kind of on the Defiant. Yeah. Like it's very upbeat, very driving. Like this, like the Ones We Leave Behind is definitely one of the ones that's like that.
This song has a different feel to it than the other ones for sure. Like that melodic idea at the beginning is so good. That's like a prime Trivium song right there. And I like that. I wish there was more of that on here. Yeah. Again, like I'm kind of confused on like why they wrote this record in that fashion. If they want to do this style going forward, it should be like in the vein of The Sin in the Sentence.
I wonder if like people say that because like that's the first time like they heard like Trivium like do that kind of thing. So like you hear like what the Dead Men say and it's kind of like I kind of heard this before already.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would have liked if this record came out first. I still don't think I would have liked it as much.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I would have. I don't want to say that like some of the other ideas on this sound like throwaway ideas. I wonder if some of these were just like things that were flushed out just to get it out. I know a lot of the lyrics have more meaning, but
like this last song is about for the people that win, somebody has to lose.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That's what this one is really driven by lyrically. I think that's really what changed the album for me is a lot of the lyrics for this one too, because I was my first time I heard the album, I kind of ranked it like right in the middle, like not the best Trivium album, but not the worst either.
I think this one goes on one of the lower tiers for me.
One of the low tears.
Out of 9 albums, I don't think this is one of the best ones for sure.
The other thing with this album I have a problem with, and I've been stating this for a long time, I'm a firm believer that tracking is very important when you release an album. Because if an album doesn't flow, it just doesn't sound right. And there are moments in this album where it just doesn't, for me, one of the hardest transitions, and this has actually been a Trivium thing, where they always have that track where they just kick off with the harsh, growling vocals.
Yeah.
And it's always awkwardly placed, and it doesn't seem to ever flow for whatever reason when they do it. When you go into from Catastrophist to Among the Shadows and the Stones, it doesn't like flow into it. It's just kind of like,
it's kind of just like boom.
it depends on the situation. You know, if you do it right, it can work. But here, it doesn't work. In the tracking, it just doesn't flow. And when it doesn't flow, sometimes that's a turnoff.
Can you picture Matt and Paulo and Corey all just like arguing over like how to put the track listing? Matt just gets really mad and leaves. He's like, "It's a travestinium." I'm leaving.
The new record, Travestinium.
The title track is from our struggles about trying to track the albums. So it's about just agreeing with people.
I kind of agree with you on that, Sam, because this is one where the flow is definitely strange. You know, you go into each track, you go track by track on this album, and it's kind of like, oh, that's like, oh, because it's going there.
Older Trivium albums for me, there's always been a couple of songs that I really liked, and then it would flow into another song. I'm an album kind of guy, so I'll listen to an album start to finish, then I'll get hooked on a song, and then I'll get hooked on another song, and usually the song that flows back into that, or flows from that, I'll get hooked on if it flows really well. If it flows really well, it's easier to be pulled into a full record and really love something rather than we're just going to put a compilation together.
Well, even so, it's definitely one of my more favorite albums of the year so far. Let us know what you guys think. Leave that in the comments below. Be sure to catch Matt Heafy on Twitch.
Don't forget to catch us on Twitter. We're on Twitter now.
That's right, yeah. Go follow our Twitter. You know, we're posting all of our updates there. And we'll see you for the next review. I think we got a good one coming up next. I think we're going to be really divided on this next one coming up, but you'll have to see.
Maybe we'll do another 5-finger death fisting review.
It's possible. Stay tuned.